And now, live from our studios in San Marcos, California, it's another episode of Fix Your Funnel Friday. And here's your host, Ryan Chapman.
Welcome to today's Fix Your Funnel Fridays video. Today, the winner was outbound calling. So we're going to be talking about outbound calling and how you can incorporate it into your Infusionsoft. So when I look at outbound call types, there are three types that we look at. There's casual, there are responsive, and when I say responsive, I'm talking about calls that we make in response to someone filling out a form, that kind of thing, where the customer's taking some sort, or the prospect's taking an action, and as a result, we're responding back to them. Casual just means we do it on the fly, there's no real rhyme or reason to it. And then finally we have planned or list-based. These are calls that we make to a list of prospects for a particular reason. Frequently, businesses will do this haphazardly, this a little bit more consistently. We're going to talk about both of these and how those come into play with Infusionsoft. So let's go ahead and set some standards right off the bat. Our standards are, we want to know, we want some transparency in all of our outbound calls. I imagine you want the same thing. We want that in our business. So who was called? We want to know when they were called. It'd be nice to have that recorded as well. Who again, but in this time, who made the call? And then how long was the call? Now, if you're all by yourself, this may not be as big a deal, but if you have any employees, then you want to know who made the call. That way we can have some transparency on how interaction is going with the client or prospect. The other important standard, these are our standards, is, and this needs to all happen automatically, because we already know that if it doesn't happen automatically, it's probably not going to happen. I don't know if you've used phone logs before, but they tend to go by the wayside quickly. The other part we need to do is we need to remove any excess decision making. Now, I may not spell words right, that's okay, no spell check here. So any excess decision making we need to have removed. So these are our standards. If we can't accomplish that, then we're really not helping with our outbound calling, we're just making it more complicated. And technology really should make things simpler so we can focus on the thing that really has the most value. So let's look at responsive. With all of our outbound dialing, we use something that we developed here at Fix Your Funnel called our dialer. I think we call it speed dialer to sound fancy, but essentially it's an outbound dialer. It's a web-based phone basically, and you can place phone calls from it, and it's totally integrated with Infusionsoft. So we get the who, when, like who was called and who called them, when and how long the call was automatically. That automatically gets placed as a note in the contact record whenever a call is made through our dialer. If you are dialing out to somebody who we don't have a phone number or contact record for, let's say we're doing a casual dial, we still will capture that because we'll create a contact record and add that information in. And pull up that contact record automatically in Infusionsoft. That way you're able to update the record, which we'll get into more in just a bit. Now, on the responsive side, we have two things. We have hot lists. These are people who have filled out maybe a web form with the phone number requested in it. And as a result, when that web form is submitted, we want to have Infusionsoft indicate to our dialer that there was a phone call or a phone number received, and it needs to have a phone call returned or made to it. So this might be something like request a quote, or if we have some other form that would generate a lead where it's important for us to talk to them immediately. I'm sure you've already heard of the study that was done with Harvard, where they tested, Harvard Business School did the journal did a study where they said if you get to a person within 5 minutes, the chances of you closing that sale are dramatically higher than if you wait even a minute past 5 minutes. So every second after 5 minutes, it drops down further. And that makes sense if you think about interest levels are peaked normally for a period of time, especially true with small business owners. We have a lot going on, so if we're researching something, that's the moment for us to be interacted with. So if you're going business to business, for sure that's going to be a big benefit. Even business to consumer, they need to, when they're on the hunt for something, that's the time to get a hold of them, to talk to them. So we use hot list, and the way that hot list works is when that form is filled out, it'll push up that name and that phone number right into a quick list that's on the left of our dialer. I'll show you in just a moment. And as you can see there, that hot list gets populated with a context, and then as well as the name and phone number. Clicking on the name will pull up the contact record. Clicking on the phone number will make the call. So that hot list is great. We also do a backup, not just using the hot list, but we also use SMS. So we have an SMS message go out to the person who's supposed to be making the call. That way they know that that came in. So if they're at their desk and they're on the dialer, then they'll use the hot list, and if they're away from it, then they're using the SMS. And that's how we deal with responsive calls. These are calls that need to be made in response to something the prospect or the customer does. Now on the other side, we have planned or list-based. Now the keys with planned or list-based calls is you should be using saved searches. And the reason we're using saved searches is because of the complex criteria. So we can set up complex criteria in our saved searches that make it so we don't have to think about who to call. And that's really important because the biggest, especially in sales, the biggest problem that salespeople have is indecision when it comes to what should they be doing. So we want to eliminate indecision, whether we're the person calling or we have a salesperson calling. And the way we do that is we do saved searches that have complex criteria that indicate who should be called in this context. And the name of our saved search should indicate the context. That way the salesperson knows exactly what they're doing when they pull up that saved search. Our dialer has saved searches incorporated into it. It was a choice we made versus importing, exporting, and all the other things you've probably dealt with if you've worked with the dialer before. All the data stays in Infusionsoft. We're just interacting with it with the phone call with the FixYourFunnel dialer. Now what's important besides using a saved search, no matter what system you're using, is we want to create, you want to set some sort of schedule and number of tries. So that's the next criteria. What do I mean by schedule and number of tries? How frequently do we want phone calls to be made to a particular person that is in the saved search? And how many times will we try to reach them unsuccessfully before we don't try to reach them anymore? And this is a matter of economics. You got to decide how many calls it is. We know that the number of touches before somebody is most likely to buy, in terms of percentage, it goes really up high when we get to 5+. So you'll have to make your own decision. But understand that the phone call is just one touch. It's one type of touch, and it's one touch. It doesn't have to be the only touch that we're using. In fact, that's the beauty of using FixYourFunnel and Infusionsoft together, or just Infusionsoft in general, is that we can automate this. And that's what comes up next, is we need to have our dispositions. So how are we going to dispose of this prospect or this customer once the call is made? So at the end of each call, we need to have a way to be able to indicate what happened on the call, record it for transparency, again to enhance these standards here, and then further we want to be able to make some things go on in the background. So when we create dispositions, we usually do that with an internal web form, and that internal web form will have a series of checkboxes that allow us to indicate what happened on the call, and that can then apply tags, which will then initiate automation going in the background. These dispositions can be related to some specific channels that we know that people are going to fall into depending on their situation, what we have happening in terms of interaction on the phone. We could have as one of these checkboxes, we left a voicemail. With FixYourFunnel's speed dialer, for example, you can upload recorded voicemail messages you want to leave, and then if you get a voicemail, you just hit the play button, and boom, it will go ahead and drop you off the line, play the voicemail, and then hang up, and indicate that it was a voicemail for your little stats there, which is an important part as well. Well, when we get into the internal web form, we want to mark a checkbox that says left voicemail, and this left voicemail then can go and hit a counter that when the counter hits the number of tries that we indicated here, then can change the disposition and put them into like maybe a couldn't reach list, which it would be pulling them out of the main list that your salesperson or your customer support people are calling from. We can also have another common one would be if we send an email too. So we tried them on the phone, we wanted to send a custom email, we sent a one-off email to them, that could be another disposition. But we also want to have some that are actual follow-up sequences that we want to deliver that would be multimedia. So if we knew that we had for this particular list, let's say a mailing address, we may want to automate some direct mail, we may want a card or a postcard to go out. We would, if we have SMS, for example, if we know we have their cell phone number, or we think we might have their cell phone number, one of the things that we do is when we do the voicemail, we have with that particular type of voicemail, we also have an SMS that is automated to go out to let them know, hey, I just left you a message, check it out and get back to me or whatever. So we can automate the SMS along with the voicemail. And this is all done by just hitting a checkbox and hitting submit on an internal web form connected to the contact that we just dialed through our dialer, or if you were to do it through another way, that's how you would do it. So now what's important here is your internal web form that you're going to create isn't going to stay the same. You're going to give your best guess when you get started, And then as your customer, you work with prospects or customers, they're going to tell you what should be on your form. So if you're running into the same concern time and time again, and your salesperson using a sales scenario isn't able to overcome that, then you can come together as a team and say, okay, how can we address this concern? And again, we have multimedia, so we can use SMS, we can use email. Obviously, we're already using the phone, and maybe with that, we're just leaving a voicemail because we're not able to get a hold of them. But if we can use SMS, we can use email, we could use direct mail, and my personal favorites are, we could use a postcard or a greeting card. Why do I want these two? Well, just because they're not your ordinary direct mail piece, and so they tend to get opened, and we can still get our message across. So then that's especially true for the greeting card. But I can have all this automated into sequences that are kicked off with simple checkbox by my person who's on the phone, maximizing their time and effort, and then allowing things to go on the background. Now, the other thing that can happen in these sequences is, in addition to sending a text message immediately and maybe an email that tells them more of what was in our voicemail, we could also be doing the direct mail and stuff, but we can also have in here the application of a tag to add somebody back into the list. So what we do in ours, and I'll show you in the in-depth video that will come after this, we indicate if it was a voicemail that we want to take them off of the current calling list for at least a day, because we don't want to call them the same day. We don't have them going through the list over and over again. So we take them off the list, put them into a sequence that just has a timer delay, and then when that's over, we reapply a tag that pops them back into this criteria for the saved search, allowing them to come back into the call list. And we could do that so it's a day the first time, it could be 2 days the next time, you can space it out however you want. But then that allows you to be able to track how many calls are going on, to be able to get the timing down so that the decision making isn't happening at all for the salesperson. It's all happening inside of Infusionsoft. So the disposition is the next important step you need to have. Now, these are some pretty, I don't know, I consider them good basic concepts for dealing with outbound calls. But if you would like to get our in-depth video where I'm actually going to show you how to do this inside of FixYourFunnel as well as inside of Infusionsoft. So how do we set up our internal web forms and our sequences? How do we utilize the speed dialer that has some of these features like the hot list, our FixYourFunnel SMS to do the SMS, and then how the speed dialer brings in the saved searches, and how we use the schedule and number of tries as part of our sequences, then you're going to want to text to this number right here, 760-621-8199. And if you would like to receive the in-depth video, go ahead and you can text in the initials FYFF. So text in FYFF and to this phone number, and you will get the in-depth video. I know we had a little issue with that on the last one because I was in a hurry because I didn't realize Fix Your Funnel Fridays didn't mean film it Friday afternoon. So try it again if you did last week and you didn't get your link. You will get your link this time. It's FYFF 760-621-8199, and we'll give you an in-depth video showing how you do all this inside of Fix Your Funnel as well as Infusionsoft. And thanks for joining us for Fix Your Funnel Friday, Episode 2.